So, today we're diving into something pretty profound and honestly kind of unsettling. It's a psychological procedure from our source material called the Methodology of Unmaking. We're going to break it down almost like a clinical overview, looking at its stages, the tools it uses, and its really terrifying final goal. Think of it as a metaphor for that deep self-confrontation we all dread, just cranked up to the absolute extreme.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts, let's just frame this with one question. I want you to really think about this. What if you were forced to face every single lie you've ever told yourself? Every excuse, every little self-deception you've used to get by, all of it, hitting you at the exact same moment. That's the core of the ordeal we're about to walk through.
Okay, let's begin with Act 1, the procedure. Now, it's really important to get this straight. This isn't some chaotic, messy breakdown. According to the source, this is a highly structured, almost surgical process. It's a systematic dismantling of a person's reality, and it uses very specific instruments to get the job done. And the goal? Well, it's brutally simple. To completely shatter the illusions that a person builds their identity on. The whole thing is engineered to strip away everything that's false, to deconstruct what you might call the performative self, the mask we wear for the world. And it's all done to get the subject ready for a final, definitive prognosis. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The methodology applies pressure from two different directions at the same time. On one hand, you've got the ebony clock tower, which is described as this relentless external psychological pressure. But on the other hand, you have the verdant dragon, which forces this unavoidable internal reflection. It's basically a pincer movement right on the person's psyche. And all that pressure, it just builds and builds until we get to Act 2, the confrontation. This is the real heart of the procedure, what the source material calls the ordeal and the abyss. And at this point, the focus shifts almost completely to that internal battle. The process then officially enters a specific stage, and it's called the wild hunt. And that name tells you everything you need to know, right? The subject isn't just sitting and thinking anymore. They are being actively hunted. And not by something outside of them, but by their own mind, their own self. There is nowhere to run.
So, what exactly is the hunter in this wild hunt? It's the verdant dragon. But, and this is so important, the source is very specific here. This is not some literal, mythical beast. It's a clinical instrument. It's described as a diagnostic tool, an internal mirror, and, maybe the most chilling part, the living embodiment of all ignoble knowledge. That's every single buried truth, every failure, every dark thought the person has refused to look at.
I mean, listen to this quote directly from the source. It calls the dragon a gargantuan mirror that reflects the internal rot. What a visceral image. It implies the dragon isn't making anything up, it's just showing the decay that was already there, festering just under the surface. So its function is totally systematic. It's designed to dig up every single suppressed failure, to expose every hidden lie you tell yourself. It forces this raw, direct reckoning with what the text calls the rotting interior psyche. And that last point there, that's the whole game. It makes sure there is absolutely, positively, nowhere left for you to hide from yourself.
Which brings us finally to the last act, the prognosis. After a confrontation that devastating, what could possibly happen next? What is the actual consequence of having that kind of forced, absolute clarity?
The result isn't peace. It's not acceptance, at least not at first. The sources describe it as one single moment of blinding, agonized clarity. Just try to imagine the pain of seeing every one of your flaws, your lies, your deepest failures, all at once, with no filter, no excuses, and no way to look away. So why? Why is that agonizing moment so critical? Because it's an essential prerequisite. That moment of pure, painful honesty is the only thing that can finally strip away the last of what they call the stargazer's performative illusions, that carefully constructed false self. All that's left is the raw, unvarnished truth of who they are. And from that place of total vulnerability, with nothing left to hide behind, the subject is presented with their final prognosis. It is the most fundamental choice you can imagine, and it's reduced to a stark binary code, 0 or 1. And these are the two logics, the two paths. On one side, you have the logic of 0. This is total dissolution, the final shattering of the ego. It's accepting that internal rot and just choosing to cease to exist. But then, on the other side, you have the logic of 1. This is true sovereignty. This is the choice to take all of that agonizing clarity,
that full, brutal knowledge of yourself and use it to rebuild, to reconstitute the self on a foundation of absolute truth.
And so that's what it all comes down to. The entire methodology, this whole ordeal, culminates in this one final question. After being completely unmade, after facing that verdant dragon in the abyss of your own soul, what do you choose? Annihilation or the incredibly difficult, painful path to becoming truly whole? Total dissolution or true sovereignty?